This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Business Podcast. Today's discussion is on Fitch Warnings. Fitch Warnings. And here's what Fitch said, and it's really a statement as to our whole country and deficit spending and the horrible problem of politicians trying to keep things good for the short term so they get reelected. So Fitch notes today that more banks may be due for ratings challenges, ratings downgrades, including the biggest banks like JP Morgan and so forth. So what you've got going on is we end up in real trouble, and when the U.S. at some point has to take some medicine, is when the U.S. itself is downgraded, which Fitch has already done, and that's the backstop for the biggest banks. We're Bank of America, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citi, and so forth. JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells, Citi serve as the backstop for the mid-sized and regional banks, because when there's really a calamity, the government steps in and asks one of those banks to take it over, just like UBS took over Credit Suisse. We end up really with the challenging topic of dominoes, and this is all sort of, unfortunately, so foreseeable, is when the biggest governments and the biggest banks are so overextended that they themselves start to show fragility. And this is where we're at. And at some point, the U.S. government, with all the promises it's made, whether in pensions, Social Security, Medicare, and everything else, is going to have to figure out how to tax more and shrink the economy. In some ways, God forbid from my perspective, but it is what it is, or spend less. And the problem with spending less is the government has made so many obligations, so many promises in so many different ways to please so many different constituents that much of the spending's not curtailable. There is spending that is curtailable. There's a lot that's just not, that just can't be touched. We've almost got to go back to the sequestration idea where we just put in automatic spending kits of 2% or something of that sort while we try and raise tax revenues. But what a mess the government and these banks have gotten themselves into, and the fragility that is there, I think, is real. In any event, Fitch, thank God. I mean, Fitch and the rating agencies, I've been fans of, not fans of. They often play the political game, all those kinds of things. But thank God for them sending the warning sign on the U.S. government debt, on sort of bank debt and bank fragility and so forth. At some point, someone in the government may wake up and hear it and try not just to please current constituents get reelected, but try and solve some real fiscal problems. What an absolute mess. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. And sorry if both these podcasts today, China, Russia, and the gloom, and here Fitch Warnings and the gloom that comes with that are both negative and have geopolitical impacts as well, not just business impacts. But thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity Business Podcast. We'll be back with you later today with a couple more podcasts if Chanel allows me to. Thank you for listening.